Yeah, I didn't do it for you.
Hey, Andrew, man, how are you, man?
Hey, man, sorry I'm late, man.
That's all good, man. I'm just used to that. But anyhow, how are you doing today, man?
Doing good, man.
Glad you could make it. We're in this undisclosed location at Andrew's place, and we are here to interview the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Atkinson.
All right,
Have
thank
a
you for
seat.
having me. I have a seat over here. Oh, shit, I'm late. Fuck. Damn. Hey, man.
Hey, Clayton.
Sorry I'm late, man.
No problem. It's just, it's only 2 hours.
I apologize, man. I got stuck in traffic out there on I-80, Route 4.
Whatever. Let's just
Sorry, my brother.
You always say. Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Andrew Atkinson. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm sorry I'm late.
You're not late.
I don't think I'm late. It's one thing you can't be on a Broadway show is late, because you will not survive. But anyway,
Absolutely.
first of all, you were born in New York, or you were born in
Florida,
you were born in New Jersey? Where are you from?
from Earth. I was actually, my mom flew from Jamaica and had me there.
Oh, really?
Instant American citizen right there. And then I went back to Jamaica and I grew up there for a while.
Wow.
Born in Miami.
Still have a lot of family out in Jamaica?
A bunch of my brothers, cousins, they're all there. My dad stayed there till his last breath. So I have a lot of family there. Between Jamaicans all congregate in the same place. Anyone who's Jamaican who hears this knows exactly the places. Toronto, New York, Miami, England.
Wait, why Toronto?
It's all the same. People go wherever the work is.
Okay.
So some family goes there and they say, yo, out of this place. But I heard it's cold, but the work is there. So everyone ends up going there for whatever reasons. That's one of the main drivers. But yeah, Toronto's one. There are a lot of Caribbean people there, actually. Before we proceed, how long have we known each other? Do you remember?
Since 2009.
2009. Look at that. Time flies.
Yeah. I think that's when you came and through our mutual friend, Brian Hankins, you
That's
came
right.
and watched Memphis the Musical. Is that when you came to New York?
Yes, somewhere around that time I came to New York, early 2009, late 2008. Yeah.
And you came because of work?
I came for a different scenery, coming into the scene and seeing what would happen when I came here.
And did you want to play Broadway back then?
No, I definitely did not want to play Broadway then. I wanted to play everything else.
Wow. Did you hear a lot of Broadway tunes when you were in Jamaica?
Not at all.
Really?
No, I didn't hear any Broadway tunes, really. Everybody in Jamaica listened to country and listened to Bob Marley.
Country?
And in the 90s, dance hall was big. So Shabba Ranks,
Yes.
all those people.
All the ranks, Nardo ranks.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, so country music?
Yes, my mom played it every day. Yeah.
Like Johnny Cash country, Hank Williams country?
As
Or-
country as it could get. We had spurs, boots, and lasso. Jamaicans are cowboys, man. Well, my dad was a cow farmer. My mom was a peanut farmer. So the culture is very, very similar. So they loved country. My mom did. My dad listened to ska. So he was jamming to all that all the time and reggae. He saw Bob Marley 30 times live.
Were you listening to the same things when you were growing up? And what got you into playing drums?
No, when I was younger, I was like, oh, this country music. She's always listening to this country music. I found an interest in country music later when I was an adult. But when I was a kid, I just really didn't want to hear all of that. But I loved Bob Marley, Shabba, I loved Buju Banton, I loved all the great guys that were around. But I played a lot of video games. So interestingly enough, video games in the 80s, 90s had a lot of great music. So whether you knew you were listening to great music or not, you heard it because that's what was the backing track to all these games.
Donkey Kong, Asteroids?
Further down, they got a little bit better with the scoring as the bits got higher. Even Michael Jackson scored one of the Sonic games. A lot of people don't know that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll play some of that after the interview. You're going to be shocked when you hear it. Stranger in Moscow, all those songs were in Sonic video game.
What?
Yeah,
Maybe that's past my time. That was more of the 90s.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. I was in the 90s. So what happened, I was humming these songs, singing these songs, maybe listening to some pop music, some American artists, Jamaican artists. So when I ended up becoming a musician, it was like, I always tell people who I teach or talk to. Some people always say to you and I, oh, I'm tone deaf. I don't have a musical ear or don't have talent. And I tell people all the time, they're practicing music and they're practicing dancing. They just don't know. It's in their upbringing. They have music in their house all day. They're getting ear training. If they're listening and singing back the songs, that's a form of ear training. You're trying to match the pitch. You're trying to stay in time with it.
Did you always want to play drums, or was there any other kind of instruments lying around the house or other family members playing instruments?
It's a great question. Yes, there were instruments. My mom had an acoustic guitar in the house. My grandfather played banjo, but I never saw him play. I just heard about it. And in my house in Jamaica, still to this day, there's a stand-up upright piano. And I used to just go and play it. I don't know what I'm doing, one finger. So again, a form of ear training without even knowing. This is like when I'm 5, 6, 7 years. Every day I would go mess with the piano and play the guitar. I didn't know what I was doing. But then that went away for a long time. And then I got into other things. My dad had a construction company. So he was teaching me about cars. That this is a turbo, this is where it goes. So I started learning about using my hands. I started building things. I used to get project little cars and toys, build them. I used to get into building other things, got into computers, building computers, still using the hands, got into art. Then I got into art school. And then I started drawing and painting. I got really good at it. With a number 2 pencil, I could draw you. It looks almost exactly realistic. I was very good at that at 11, 12 years old. So they put me in a special program that ended up sending me to a school for architecture. I was going to get my bachelor's degree from 9th grade to 12th grade. And then when I graduated, this is in the hood too, in Miami. And when I graduate, I would be able to start my master's or even get a job at the age of 17. I was a year ahead in school. So then I went in this school and I was like, something just told me, nope. And I just stopped at the door and my mom held me in and I was like, not going here. And she said, boy, if you don't come to this school, I'm going to send you back to Jamaica. And I told her, listen, you can't control my dad. This is my young me talking like I'm some old man. You can't control when you're dead and gone. I'm the one who decides my destiny. You can't tell me what to do. I can fail all the classes here. There's nothing you can do. I'll just get kicked out. She just had no rebuttal to that. All right, let's go. We never went to my first period class, never went back to my middle school because my middle school is still the old format, if you remember, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. So the high school and middle school overlap. So I went back to my 9th grade middle school, and they messed up my schedule and put me in percussion. And that's how I ended up becoming a drummer. I tried to transfer out of the class, and they said, no, you can't transfer. You have to do at least 2 weeks, and then we'll revisit this in 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, I bought a pair of sticks. I remember raising my hand, and my band director was the son of a famous trumpet player who played with Duke Ellington's big band and Count Basie. And Jocko's big band. He was able to do all of them. Actually, we still speak all the time. He was the greatest teacher I ever had for discipline, for having a routine, everything. And also being a good musician, the foundational stuff. He was the best thing ever. And he taught there's a lot of other successful musicians in New York. Back to the point of the question. I started practicing. I bought the sticks. I bought the mallets. I got into doing this. I said, all right, I'm going to commit to this. There were 67 students in this percussion class. It was poor school, so we didn't have drum pads. We all had a chair and another chair. We just played and the first rudiment is double stroke roll. What? Left as slow as you can, speed it up, down. I went in there, did it, and the way this class worked is you only can challenge the kid in front of you. Not behind you, not 5, only in front of you. If you keep winning, you keep moving up, and then there was always someone in first place. So he made it a competitive environment. So I went in, everyone tried to go too fast, so they messed up. I did everything with the perfect form technique, and he goes, this is what I'm looking for. You're number 1. Damn. And so now all of a sudden that competitive spirit kicked in where I was just like, you know what? I'm going to stay here because I'm winning in here. And I like this. And that's how my musical journey started.
You said you used to build computers. Did you want to eventually work for Apple and build the best computers?
You see his face? Everybody, you see this guy's face? He's always throwing this Apple ball because he knows I don't use any Apple product. We did learn on the Apple computers back in the day with the green, or I forgot what the name of the screen is, where it was only green background. And you just did basic coding, and we learned how to do coding floppy disks.
Yes.
Did all that. But my first computer, I'll never forget, there was a Gateway 2000. It came in that cowl-looking box.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Yes.
That's funny.
And I fell in love with that thing, man, and tried to mod it and get it more powerful in their computers. And then we were playing games and we were building maps. So I was already on that path of becoming a coder or some kind of programmer if I would have continued, because that generation, most of those people who did, that's what they're doing now.
So you got to the front of the line in this percussion ensemble. Was that junior high or high school?
This is middle school. So this is 8th grade going into 9th grade.
Did you keep that spot?
The whole year. They even brought in a friend of mine. We played basketball together. We still talk all the time. And he's an accomplished drummer with Lincoln Center. And then he said to me, he said, I heard you're pretty good with the rudiments. And he's competitive. He's still competitive to this day. He does not like losing. I'm coming to your class. We're gonna see about that. And we did. He's coming. So we went in there. He challenged me on paradiddles, and this is all I did. He played euphonium, bass, already gigging. He was gigging since he was 3, and he was a phenomenal drummer, phenomenal percussionist, musician. But all I did was rudiments at this time, classical, and I just completely embarrassed. He was so pissed about it. But that's all I did. All I did was rudiments.
So you were playing snare?
Snare, yeah. Started with snare. Moved to trumpet eventually, and I started playing trumpet halfway through the year just to get, which was the greatest thing Mustafa did for me, because it helped me get thinking about not just rhythm, but melody, which helps us drummers.
So did you play drum set when you were in that particular situation? Did you learn drum set, or was it pretty much just snare and
Timpani, snare, trumpet. But then after that moment when Obed was in that class, Mustafa said, I want you to teach him how to play drum set. So he actually was my first teacher, but he taught me my first beat. It took me 2 hours to learn how to play that beat. I always tell people this, because I tell musicians all the time, don't forget where you came from. What happens is when you hit success, you start to get you start to take things for granted. You start to think you deserve this and that, and you forget the beginning, where you came from, what got us all here, the joy, just the pure joy and happiness, playing your instrument, the vibration, the feeling, everything about it. I always try to remember that.
And the first beat was Billie Jean.
Oh, yes. That's
Full circle.
That beat makes a lot of money. That was literally the first beat.
And did your parents get you a drum set shortly after that, or did you find other ways to play drum set?
Not initially. My mom did not want me making all that noise in the house.
Yeah, I hear you.
But my dad saw an opportunity for destabilization. I told him I wanted a drum set, and he flew from Jamaica. And we went to Samash, and he bought me a red Pearl Export.
What?
He sat there and watched me set it up. And then I set it up, and he smiled. He's like, all right. It literally went straight back to the airport and flew back home.
Wow.
Then my mom came home. She's like, who bought you this? They were cheap, but they sounded decent. Big long toms.
Yes.
Big floor tom. Yeah.
And were you playing along to records? Were you just trying to play anything that you could? Playing the ska, playing the country music?
By this point now, I was introduced to, I remember the first song I heard, Night in Tunisia. And I was like, whoa, what is that? I want to do that. I like that. So I was listening to jazz all day. I was obsessed with Art Blakey. Art Blakey was my guy. Art Blakey and Max Roach were the two guys for two different reasons. I can hear the rudiments. I can hear a rudimental Max Roach was, but the dynamics of Art Blakey, he would just be so soft and just, boom, and it's the groove, and it just makes you want to move.
Yeah.
I love those two guys initially. So I was listening to them all day with my Sony Walkman.
Yeah.
For you young people, you used to have to put the cassette, not CD, the cassette in there. And then sometimes it would get messed up and you'd have to
use pencil. Gotta rewind the song.
Yeah, exactly. So I was listening to a lot of music, and then I started trying to emulate them. And that's the most important aspect of learning for all musicians or just people in general. There has to be a period of mimicking, right? Where you're just obsessed about every little detail. Now, back in the day before distractions, we were able to live in these worlds. Just put on the record and just sit there quietly with no interruptions and really listen and put yourself in the shoes of the person playing. That's what I used to do. I used to do it with all the instruments, the pianist, the bassist, the drummer, the singer, whatever song. I remember George Michael, You've Gotta Have Faith. I played that song a million times. Didn't know I was listening to a blues at the time, but I just loved the way that song flowed. And it was a New Orleans kind of, and so I would just listen to it all day and try to copy that beat. I'm sure you went through periods of that yourself as well, but that's basically the majority of my learning. It was either building up technique through practicing my roommates or trying to emulate drummers that I was in love with. No, middle school, once my mom and dad split, I spent about, in a weird way, 6 months in Miami, 6 months in Jamaica. My mom basically took me and my dad got to keep the other boys, and she went back to America. So I was doing 6 months with my dad, and then he would put me in an American school in Jamaica. And my accent was going woo, up and down. The food, it was like going back to Jamaica, you're like, oh my goodness, gay. And then you come back here, it's like cardboard. It's just, you're like, what is this? Is not chicken? The chicken, if anyone who's never been to Jamaica, if you ever go there, even just going to KFC, chicken tastes completely different, unrecognizably different. Probably because it's fresh. There was music camps every summer.
Yeah, so I know you did some marching band. Did you do drum corps too?
I did not march drum corps, but I marched winter drumline, and I taught a lot of drumline. I got actually asked to teach in drum corps at one point because I was in some pretty well-established programs in Florida with people who did teach drum corps. So I did not have an opportunity, but a lot of my friends that I marched with did march a lot of Blue Devils and Boston Crusaders drummers and horn players came out of Miami. People didn't know that in the mid-90s. So I was marching with a lot of these people. Grateful for that period of time.
I know that recently you told me that you went to a drum corps thing close to here, or maybe in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And I remember back in the day it was DCI. Is it still DCI?
It's still DCI.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Drum Corps International.
Are they the classic drum lines? Are they still around?
Oh, yeah. But they've changed a lot. They're using electronics on the field. They're not wearing those uniforms with the shakos. They're wearing leotards, they're wearing also some of the color. You're like, who is this? They don't follow their colors. They're doing a lot of dancing on the field, a lot of running around, and their drumming is completely different. It's actually quite complex. Wow. And the chops are crazy. But what's interesting, and for people who know about the drum corps, this is the last stop before finals in Allentown. That's where I went, where you get to see pretty much the closest that you'll see of where all the shows being completed. It's like they're preparing for finals. What's interesting is that when you get there, you see the camaraderie. I sat next to a guy who marched the cadets, which used to be cadets of Bergen County, New Jersey. And they moved around to other cities once they left New Jersey and before New Jersey, but they just went under. They closed for there's some legal issues. And the guy sitting next to me, he says that he marched cadets 1990 to 1994. And I started talking about the shows, and he goes, yeah, my daughter marched there too. And then this is the thing about what I love about drum corps, the camaraderie. Some of my closest friends that I talk to still to this day are people that I marched with. It's almost like we went to battle together. So we look out for each other. And what drum corps taught me is that to value teamwork, which going into Broadway, going into any musical atmosphere, I think that's when the music wins the most. When the band, when the whole organization, from the sound, the lighting, everyone understands everyone's role and respects everyone's role and works together to get this common goal of putting on a good show.
Did you plan on going to a music school after high school? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
You know why I'm laughing, right? You know why I'm smiling. Yes, I did plan to go to music school. I did go to music school, and I couldn't stand it.
Really?
Yeah. Some people could relate to this. You got your classes, like, all right, you go into class, and you're sitting there, and you're like, why am I doing this again? Math? What am I doing English for? Another essay. I started dropping classes. Just didn't tell nobody, none of my family. I had 15 credits, 12 credits, 7. Wow. And then next thing you know, at the end of the semester, I had just combo 1, wind ensemble, big band. And that happened 3 different semesters. And I was like, you know what? This is not for me. And before I did that, before I made that decision to do that, I consulted a lot of older people who I talked to my mentor. I talked to other successful musicians. I seeked out even people like Vinny Colaiuta and started seeing what was their path. And I saw that a lot of musicians succeeded without going to school and without going into all that debt. So all I did was, okay, I asked them, so then what's the best way to navigate? And they gave me great advice on how to meet people, how to continue learning, and how to raise the odds of success. And a lot of that advice was what I use still to this day.
So give me some examples of what you learned, of meeting people.
Now, there's a few things that need to happen. And man, Artur Sandoval said to me, luck is opportunity, means preparation. So a lot of people need to be honest with themselves. Are they prepared for the job? And I get it. You're looking to work. You're trying to make some money. But if your vision is you want to become a Broadway drummer, you have to look and write stuff down. See, what are the things that I need to be a good Broadway drummer? Or just a good drummer in general. Maybe I need to really learn how to play rock. Maybe I need to really learn how to play funk. Like really learn. Like what we said earlier about sitting there and learning the way someone that we idolize plays. Get in their head, learn every note. Transcribe. I've never transcribed, but I learned everything by ear. So it's a form of transcribing. It helps your memory. Reading, showing up on time, staying in shape. There's a lot of things, right? So if you're this person who doesn't have any of these together, then it's not the right time to introduce yourself to this person, because first impressions matter, right? Maybe you need to get a little better playing jazz. Is there a lot of jazz in Broadway? No, but maybe just get decent at it so that when you do have these moments, understanding how to play, maybe you're going to get called for a musical that needs Latin, disco, right? So you get all these things, you get really good at these things. Now you can introduce yourself to somebody. But for me personally, what I've learned is it's generally not the best to come in without a recommendation. The best thing to do is to find somebody that you're friends with that values what you do and have them connect you with someone. That's the number one best way to get any gig. Somebody goes, hey, this is Clayton Craddock, he could play. That's it. You coming up, hi, my name's Clayton Craddock. The odds are much lower because the timing needs to be right. Because maybe you already have 5 sets. But if Clayton comes to me and says, hey, look, this is such, and they're a really good drummer, I'm gonna consider them, say, hey, look, somebody leaves, I know someone. Maybe I'll just give them the book and say, hey, learn the book, and changes. Some people do that. So that's the advice that I have, like emailing somebody or emailing everyone with a boilerplate. We can tell when it's boilerplate.
Music school wasn't compatible with what you wanted to do, just like business school wasn't for me. You left that like a lot of musicians do, and you decided to play music full time, or did you want to go into other things?
I have a lot of passions, but the number one burning desire that I had at that time was to be a great drummer, and I wanted to be versatile. Like Vinny, like all the guys, like Gad. I wanted to be able to do just everything. And that's very hard because you have to live each style of music. It's a language you're learning. It's like learning a new language. So I just went full on in, and I was doing great in Florida. And then I outgrew Florida, and I said, New York's a bigger market. It's like LA, New York. Nashville, I didn't even consider at the time. And I almost went to LA instead. I have a lot of connections there, and they were like, come on over, Will. But I just didn't know if I wanted to trust that. I could go to New York and bet on myself a little bit better. So I saved up some money, and I went to New York, and I just met people literally all day, every day, out to everything. Expensive to do this. Eventually, the door people, they like me. They like me because I'm a nice person. They realize I'm not trying to get anything. Come on in. And so I was just hanging the Blue Note, hanging at the Vanguard, hanging everywhere. Met some people that are friends of yours, and I'm not a very shy person. If the situation was right, hey, would I be able to sit in? Sure, I would sit in, and people, now the opportunity means preparation. Right? I know at this moment what I'm capable of, so I would sit in and play, and then people would either like it or not, and they would be like, hey, let me get your number, this and that. Next thing, one thing led to another. And then I just started building up and meeting and playing with people. I think the first real gig, I went to this hole-in-the-wall place, if you remember, Harlem called St. Nick's Pub.
Yeah, tell me about that story, because talking about connections here. Tell me about St. Nick's Pub, Gregory Porter, Andres, and all that. America's Got Talent, which leads to Hamilton, which leads to where you are playing. So give me the story.
So the reason why you're asking that is partially because some people jump straight to Broadway, and I had a roundabout way to get there, which helped me build a lot of skills. But at the time, I was playing mainly jazz. Some of it was really complicated jazz, like the academic jazz, where you're like really hard, which is great for your brain. Some ways I'm not. And then I was playing with the bebop guys, which is great also for a different thing. And then the traditional swing guys, and started traveling, playing with different random people here, forged some friendships. But the first time I went into St. Nick's Pub, it was a Tuesday night or Monday night, because Gregory played on both Monday and Tuesday. And I sat in, and he loved what I was doing and asked me for my number. I think literally the next week, he was like, "Are you free to play?" The original drummer had some issues, so he wasn't able to do the gigs coming up. So I was like, sure. So I started playing every Monday and Tuesday in this place. And St. Nick's Pub is a crazy place. It's great and horrible at the same time. There's all sorts of things going on in there. But it just happened quickly. We were playing there all the time, and then we moved to Smoke Jazz Club, which is in 100-something street on Upper West. And then it's like, hey, we're going to here, we're going to Europe, we're going to this way. Next thing you know, every place we go is sold out. Smoke was every show we put up on Smoke sold out within 30 minutes. Every set. So there came a point where Gregory outgrew Smoke. And then I remember we were in Germany, and we got asked to last minute play the Blue Note, because Amy Winehouse's dad was supposed to perform there, and his daughter had passed. So then they asked Gregory to fill in that slot. Sold out in 15 minutes. And from that moment, it was just like for him. So that was great. That was a great opportunity. I got to meet a lot of people. I got to play great music. His music is phenomenal. He's an incredible artist, if anyone's ever heard him or not. The original guy came back, and then they started working again with each other. And then I went off and started playing with some different artists. I was playing in just some burlesque jazz club in Houston, off Houston in the Lower East Side. And there was a violinist on the gig. You never know where your gigs will come from. And he got asked if they know any percussionists for a TV show. So he's like, oh, I know a perfect guy. He's my favorite. And then he recommended me. Andres also got in there on that gig as well. And so we were standing next to each other playing percussion on America's Got Talent for just two Cuban kids that danced from Miami. And we became friends that day. We talked, exchanged numbers. I didn't know what he did or anything. I just knew him as someone else in the show. The manager of America's Got Talent pulled me aside and said she loves what I do so much, and she would ask me if I would want to stay along with the show doing work. So she hired me for the rest of the season. I ended up doing 3 seasons with them. Then around the second season or third season, I opened a Modern Drummer magazine. Not even open, the cover was Andres.
Andres Ferrero, by the way.
Yeah. And I texted him and said, congratulations, man. And he's like, hey, you ever played Broadway before? Didn't ask him for coffee. I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't ask him for a gig. I just said congratulations to him. And then he had a situation where he probably needed to replace some subs. This is 2015. So he said, come on through. Have you ever done Broadway before? And I was like, no, but I've played in many musicals before. He says, no, this is way different. So come to the show. At this point, I never heard of his show. I don't know what's going on. I go in there and sit down, you hear the pam, pa, ta, 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 ta. Now, this is the height of it. So you still have Lynn on stage. And when he said, my name's Alexander Hamilton, it was just like, the whole place. I said, what is going on here? And they screamed, the audience must have screamed for like 5 minutes before he could say his next line, and the music continued. But that's what it was. It's a new show. It was a big craze, and they were sold out for the next 2 years at that point. But that's some crazy advanced ticket sales, by the way. Yeah, he's like, if you want to do the show, let me know. After I checked out, sure, I'll do it. And I learned the book in 2 weeks. And then I told him I was ready, and he says, okay. And then eventually Some time went by. Eventually, he called me. I went in and played, and I did a great job. The conductor came in and told me at intermission, this is the best he's ever heard anyone come in and play a show, which is a great compliment as Broadway. It's nerve-wracking to be a sub. And I remember he said to me, "Oh, were you nervous? Are you nervous?" And I said, "No, I don't get nervous. I get prepared." Because the more prepared you are, the less nervous you are. Sometimes, for the most part.
It's true.
So I simulated the whole thing. I set the drum set up at my house.
So wait, there are 5 snare drums. Funny, Hugh on the latest interview, when I interviewed him, he said he did a clinic and he did some Hamilton songs, and people looked at the drum set. They're like, "Oh my God, such a big drum set." He's like, "It's a 5-piece drum set with 4 other snare drums." So it is big, but that's essentially what it is.
With the SPD, but he took the SPD out and put the BTs everywhere, little triggers, so he didn't. But yeah, it is essentially the meat of it is a kind of standard size drum set.
So I asked this question to the panel discussion I had on my podcast with Andres and a lot of his subs that have played the show. And I asked them, out of all the snare drums in that show, which is their favorite? And which one is yours?
Main snare.
Yeah.
Because I have to turn. Main snare, because I don't have to turn it, because it's difficult turning all of those. The low snare that he had over here with a magnetic weight, I enjoyed playing them as well. I say main snare because I can just play comfortably.
I know we're talking about snare drums being towards the left and where everything is. When obviously you can't change the things in somebody's pit setup, what did you do to make things easier? Because I know that Andre sits in a certain way. Did you have to adjust your seat height and hi-hat?
I made do because butt kicker has a cable, so turning the chair was a pain in the butt. But what I would do is either go further back. See, he sits low. I don't know if he still sits low. So I would go a little further back so that my legs would feel comfortable and I would just got comfortable. But literally I took a picture of the kit and I set it up. I went back a few times to make sure, because you think you got it and then you go and you play, you're like, "Oh, this is way closer." And I got the kit exactly how he has it, because the biggest problem is his setup is not normal. You got to get everything in a muscle memory. Once I did that, then and put it notated. I spent about one day, about 6 to 7 hours notating the fills. And then once I got that, then it was just off to the races. I was just learning and putting everything to memory. The show was super easy. That's my process. So for Andres' show, I just got used to looking where he has his music, and he used my page turns as choreography. In some of his page turns, he does a fill while he's doing the page turn. So I said, okay, I see what he's doing, and I would try it his way. If it didn't work, I did it my own way, and then committed to that is the way I'm gonna do my page turns until I memorized most of it.
Blat, do, how did you notate that?
Flam, bass, all in the right hand.
I feel it. That's how I go.
And then you stab with open-handed hi-hat. See, I still remember. It's been how many years? Almost a decade. But yeah, that's how I would play it. I assume that's how most of the drummers who play it do it.
That's interesting. I never knew that until now. 2015, got into Broadway. Did you want to sub on any other shows? Go to Chicago, Lion King?
I did not attempt to sub on any other shows for a while. I played just Hamilton. I was happy with that because I was still playing and traveling. As pop gigs, singer-songwriter. I was playing gigs on bass a lot at the time as well. I was happy with the combination of things. However, there was this new show coming with this guy that played Mean Pretty Shuffle. He hit me up and he's like, "Hey, listen, I got a show coming if you want to be a sub on my show." Again, it was offered to me, which I'm grateful for. Clayton approached me and I said, "Absolutely." And then I went over to Ain't Too Proud on the first month. I was I with the first sub show? Or did someone else sub before me? Because I think it was February I subbed. February 2019.
Yeah, I don't think there was anybody before you.
So that was the second show I've ever subbed on.
Unless it was Eric Brown, but I don't think Eric was around available yet.
Yeah, so it might have been, I might have been that, but you gave me the book before. You guys were still in previews, and you said, just give me some time. I have to at least get through this process, and then when I'm able to sub. And that's the one thing about Clayton, guys. He likes to be very clear and give you weeks in advance of what his schedule is going to be. And this is something I learned from him. You always learn from everybody. I learned from Andres. I learned from all these other people in the business. Without them even saying anything, really, I watch and I pay attention. And the one thing that I really appreciated that you did was you scheduled in a way that I can understand and schedule myself. The top of every month. So I do the same thing with my subs. I schedule everything ahead, sometimes 6 weeks ahead if I have to. Especially during the holiday period, I'm subbing out 2.5 months before.
It was May 20, obviously couldn't have been 2020. It was 2019 where I was like, it's Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. Well, probably the only thing I celebrate. And I was like, I'm going back to Connecticut. You want to do the Thanksgiving Day parade? And Andrew's like, yeah. So he was out there in the cold and I was back home.
Man, it was cold that day. It was cold. We're out there in the streets.
Yeah. And you guys were like waiting to the very end. You guys come on, right? I didn't think.
Yes, exactly. We were waiting for a while, and it was a lot. I think call time was like 4:30 or 5 a.m. Yeah, I'm very grateful though. It was a great time to hang with everybody. A lot of those people are subbing on MJ now too, so it's good to see them again.
That's. Tell me about America's Got Talent. What was that like?
The most organized machine I've ever been a part of. Holy smokes. They have something for everything there. Somebody's career job is bathroom manager. And there's people who are hallway managers just for a specific hallway. Their job is to make sure that you make it to this hallway at this time. They know everyone who needs to be crossing, their feet should be crossing here, and they're all on CBs, and they have everything. They knew my setup perfectly. You'd go there, sit down, and it's like, yeah, this is the heights that I set the last season. And they, hello, Mr. Atkinson, they have the tape, they remembered everything so that they spent time the first time, and then they had everything either written down somewhere where I've never seen this level of organization.
Wow.
And then when you're in the green room, the show runs without commercials, but on TV they run with commercials. So they have a green room manager, they have a hallway manager, they have stage left, stage right manager. They make sure that nobody is in the wrong place so that if someone's on stage with a pre-roll and then they're walking in the hallway and then the camera catches them, it would look weird. So they have to make sure that, so when a commercial would happen, they were like, you need to leave the room. And then everybody leaves, boom, everything's super organized. Another thing I appreciate about America's Got Talent is the musical manager. She's the most OCD organized. She's one of the best in the business. And she does not tolerate anything. There's no strikes. It's a no strikes rule. So anyone she hires, because she needs all sorts of things. I need an orchestra for this. I need a drummer for a band for this. You show up 1 minute late, you don't see that person the next week.
Damn.
She didn't even say anything to you. She was just like, okay. Gone. And what that did was it created an environment of you're around other people who are as organized or more organized than you. And so it was a very refreshing thing to be around. Because usually in all businesses you deal with some form of dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And then you go on stage and there's Nick Cannon with his ridiculously expensive shoes. He's checking social media of what people are saying, what he just did. And you go on stage, you do your thing, and you have to memorize all the music. No charts on stage. I tell musicians this all the time when they do gigs. Just memorize the music. It's not fun watching people staring at a piece of paper when you're on stage. I understand there are times where you can't, but presentation matters. We're entertainers at the end of the day. There's a lot of things from the show that I learned about presentation. They are the best at it. That's why they're the #1 summer show. It's not by accident. Simon knows what he's doing. Even after that, they'll be like, oh, you don't need to hang, walk through the house and go home. Get home, turn on the TV and the show will still be running. So you get paid well and you don't have to sit around all day. And it's organized. So it was a great thing. Now, Howard Stern quit the show and he was the only reason why it was in New York. He said that I will do the show, but I'm not going to California. So they brought the whole thing here, put it in Radio City for this guy. And then after 4 years, he decided he was done. And so when that was happening, they moved back to California. So I had a decision to make because they offered me the next season, but not any other aspects, lodging, transportation. So I made a decision because at that time I was subbing a lot on shows. And I was like, everything I do is here. So I'm just going to stay here. It was a great 3 seasons. Next.
How much of Hamilton did you memorize?
Hamilton is like Ain't Too Proud in terms of book size. So
Really?
I probably memorized 40% of it.
Okay.
The book, I used to say 51 numbers. And it's not 51 numbers. They cut a bunch in the middle. But let's just call it 45 numbers. That's a lot. How many numbers is Ain't Too Proud? 20?
25. maybe.
25. That's more standard. So yeah, because that show is just banger after banger. There's not much acting in the show. So that one I didn't really memorize the whole thing. I memorized Ain't Too Proud. That was one thing I noticed about you. You never had music on your stand. And I was like, hey, this is somebody else who likes to memorize stuff. I talked to you about it. He's like, yeah, I don't like looking at the book. I want to play the music. And if you guys don't know, I'm gassing up Clayton here. This guy, I've never heard anyone play to a click like this guy. He's a machine.
Hamilton, Ain't Too Proud. You played with any jazz artists? Can you just name a few?
A little run with Randy Brecker, that was a lot of fun. Gregory Porter. Othello Molyneux, he's the steel panist who played with Jaco Pastorius. I did that for about 5 years. And I got to meet everyone in the Jaco tree. They're all adjacent, they come around to say hello to him. And sometimes they come to the gig. Some of the Zamanol people, they came through there, if you know those names. So those are some jazz names.
Noe?
Oh, yes, I was Noe, of course. We spoke today, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he told me to give him a call. So when we're done here, I'll probably call and catch up with him. And again, great friend. Before we're on stage, we're friends. We actually go and eat sometimes and talk about life because we literally rarely ever talk about music. Most of my friends, that's how it is. You and I as well.
That's true.
We talk about life because music and life, they're connected.
The only time we talk about music is when I have my top 10 list and I have Madonna instead of Bob Marley.
Yeah, that's right. I dropped you as a friend.
It's like delete contact.
I literally pressed the button.
Who was the most demanding as artist you worked with? Or I should say, any kind of artist that you work with and why?
Demanding? I don't know. Thinking off the top of my head, every different job is demanding in a different way. Some people love to practice. Some people love to rehearse. Some people love to create, spend hours. Some people just love to rock the boat. They feel like they're losing control in the situation. They start throwing stuff.
If there was somebody that was demanding, what was their thing that made you say, man, you want to get to that level? Like demanding to a level where not really annoying or piss you off, but something that made you say, man, they really kicked my ass. I need to do this to get up to that level. Was there anybody like that?
Yeah, there's some people like that. You can tell you there's some conductors, I have to tell you, that don't make many mistakes. And they just never come in low energy. There's some people who come into rehearsals, artists that I've worked with, some big artists, they just never have low energy. And they're never, when I mean that, they're always positive. And they don't make a lot of mistakes. I see these people and I'm like, how is that possible? We're all human. We all have off days. You wake up and your mind is not right. You can't remember anything. I just look at those people in awe, like, how do you do that? And a lot of it is they have discipline in their diet, in their health, in their sleep routine, in everything they do. And it translates in efficiency. Now they have less things that are going to pull or their attention or their energy from whatever they have to do. So I look at those people that are like that and I really admire and try to emulate that myself.
So you got the call to be a drummer for MJ. Did you have to audition for that?
Sure. They selected a group of people they thought and were recommended. Thank you to the previous working at Hamilton. V's production reached out to them and they recommended only me. So that was very nice. And so your production also recommended me too. So that is partially how I ended up my name in the bucket I went in there and I did whatever I needed to do. I didn't really need to prepare much because opportunity means preparation. I played this music my whole life. Not just played it for fun, like played it as close as the original guy, learned how he did it. And so just went in there and played the parts and I didn't even follow the book. I looked at this and I was like, this is not right. I'm going to do it the way I think it is. If they hate it, then it's not for me. Went in there and did what I did. And they told me that after I played, which was nice. Supervisor didn't have to tell me this, but he told me, he's like, you played everything else was a formality. We already knew that. It was like, this was going to be your job. It's very nice to hear. It's validating because you work hard to get to these points. That's why I'm bringing it up. You work hard to get to these points. And it's very nice when they produce results.
Jalen Pettinard on the podcast talked about when he had the opportunity to audition for the Alicia Keys musical. There were some things he didn't really know before, but he got the gig and they were like, congratulations, but there's one little caveat. You have to play on electronic drums. Like, never having played electronic drums, he figured it out. What was it like for you knowing that was going to be the case? We obviously played them before, but it's a whole different beast.
Let's go back to 2020. Initially, I was told one thing and then something else transpired, which was basically we were going to be on stage for part of the show and we're going to play electronic drums. And then I was going to be in a booth and play my actual drums. So they made a decision, and this happens all the time in all sorts of industries. On America's Got Talent, they changed things on the fly, even right up before filming. It was just, I can show you my email chain. It was like 150 deep for one song for the week. That's how many changes would happen. We're doing it here. We're doing, okay, no, we're doing it. I'll send you track, this and that. Just understanding that is, as musicians, we get thrown these curveballs all the time, and we're problem solvers. Drummers are the greatest, I will say this, drummers are the greatest problem solvers on the planet, I think. I think we have to solve problems at an unusually high clip, and nobody ever thanks us. Very rarely, it's a very thankless job, but what happens is we become good at problem solving other things. So what happened in this situation is once they decided that, we were in lockdown before I knew that this change was happening. So I got the electronic drums they had already, and I told them this is junk. And they threw it out, and they said, whatever you want to do next, we'll do it. So I created a whole new system, solved the problem. I researched and got this company, and then a cymbal company that never existed. I talked to the owner. He said they're like real cymbals, but they're electronic. I have piezo's underneath. And we ended up using 2 modules. I wanted to actually use a laptop, but they didn't want to have too many points of failure. So they want to stay with the box. So Pro Mimic, Roland TD50. We have those 2 things going on. And then when we went into theater, it basically said to me, hey, we've made a decision. My drums are sitting in the lobby, ready to go in the booth. And it's like, we've decided we're going to just go full electronic. I'm like, okay, that's news. So when I heard that, of course, people like us who are fans of vibration, of course, there's a little disappointment or a lot of disappointment. But then you go, okay, I'm in this situation. How do I make lemonade with lemons? So I reprogrammed the drums. Took me hundreds of hours. I custom built the whole thing, make it work for MJ, because the sounds in there were not the right sounds. And even the sounds that I came, they're not even as good as how a real drum, but they did the job. And I was able to basically use my studio, mix and EQ and record maybe 80% of the sounds that are on the drums there and match it as close as I could to my sonars, recording all of the sonar drums. And at that time, you weren't able really even to do a lot. I had to talk to the pro people that allowed me to unlock the Pro Mimic so I could upload my own WAV files and do all that. Because every drum has multiple WAV files. So you have to record soft, medium, get all the things. It took me hours. But what happened is it created a usable product. And some people even say that it sounds really good. My drummer ears and acoustic ears, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. But I'm still proud of what I was able to achieve.
What do you have on the stage?
I have a Drum Tech shells, which is basically sonar shells, and field cymbals at the top. They're real cymbals. that are emulating electronic cymbals. And then the ride and the hi-hat are Roland digital. They're connected to the Roland. Actually, the ride is still a field ride. So it's a kind of a mix of a bunch of
Field electronics? Is that
Field Electronics, yes.
Okay.
It's a cymbal company that does only electronics.
And what kind of bass drum pedal do you have?
I started with the Pearl, and then I moved from the Pearl to the DW machine one. It's very expensive, just like buying it. It's way more expensive than buying my Pearl Export bag. I mean, I can buy 3 Pearl Exports. It's fully customized. It was DW's most expensive pedal. They made it out of one piece of metal. It's really light, but I could get it to rebound the way I needed it off a fake head. Took me some time, but it's called a DW machine. I think the double pedals, like $1,400.
Damn.
That's right. It's expensive.
Do you use different kinds of sticks?
Yes, I use the 5A Extremes.
Okay.
And they're longer. They have a bigger beater. And a shaft that doesn't chip much. You can go almost a whole year off one pair of sticks.
Wow.
Half a year. And they trigger, because of the weight and the length of them, they trigger a lot easier. And I just told all my subs, you can just use those. I'll sit it right on the snare drum. If you don't want to use them, again, this is my thing. I don't really like using outside cymbals. People bring their dirty tips and they start playing and they start marking everything up. So I just tell them, just use these or use clean sticks.
Yes. Is the show mostly on click?
The show is 90% on click. There's only 1-2 moments in one thing you do completely off click, and then 2 other moments where the click turns off near the end.
When you got the show, you had the music, you knew the songs. How much of the show is more authentically MJ and the Jackson 5, and how much of it is Broadway? Is it like 50-50, or is it 75 real and 25% you stop and you're like, hey, Michael, where are you going? That type of, you got to have the dialogue. Tell me how much Broadway it is and how much reality.
I would say 60-40. 60, because the source material is very strong. And then the choreography is not how Michael is interpreted very different. There's a mix of ballet, there's a mix of pop and lock. There's all sorts of things happening on stage. And so what happens is, of course, dance cues. So then now dance cues start to come in to play. And then so you have to just understand you're serving the dancers. You're serving the visual. But mostly it feels like you're playing a gig with a click track.
Okay.
With some Broadwayisms. I call it Broadwayisms out for sure. But that makes it enjoyable, makes it doable. My subs all say, they're like, yeah, this is easy to learn because it feels like I'm doing it. They all have experience doing big shows. Half of my subs that are on it. So they're like, yeah, it feels closer to that in their wheelhouse. So I'd say 60-40, which is a big mix. Usually it would be like 80% Broadway, 20%. Yeah.
There's some fills that you do that I was like, it's another thing. I can't play like Andrew. But some of the stuff you do is just amazing. I'm like, how did you do that fill? And do your subs transcribe those fills? And do you know if they do them exactly like you do? Because you're not there, but.
Word on the street. Let me stop. They've all played it for me. So yes, they all do it to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
Or some of them, they're like, man, this one took me like a month or not. It's just because it's just my way of doing things. And once they got the mind frame, then it was easy. Because another thing I learned from both you and Andres and other Broadway drummers is when you're writing a book, you should write the book with the subs in mind. Don't want to, and also with the fact that you're going to do 416 shows in a year in mind.
Too.
So I recycle a lot of fills. So you learn some of them. Once you learn that one, then I can say this is the same fill, except it's just slightly different here. This is that. There's a lot of recycling. You recycled it so many times, it became almost a theme of A Too Proud. So it's the same thing I did with MJ. I recycled 5 or 6 fills throughout the show.
I think there's one in Thriller that's just.
Yeah, that happens only once. I just tell them to play whatever 6-tuplet they want. But some of them were like, nope, I want to do it exactly this way. And then they learned it, and then they asked a lot of questions because they couldn't figure out what was going on. And once I told them, oh, it's easy. It's way easier than it sounds. It just sounds extravagant.
Okay. when somebody reaches out to you and say, for instance, they reach out to you and say, what do I need to do in order to be on Broadway and be a successful drummer who plays shows? What are some things that you'd recommend to them, and what would you tell them?
Maybe I'm old school, but I think we should bring back being honest with people, especially if people...
So you never make it, get out of here, kid.
I wouldn't go that far.
That's kind of honest, though. But
Yeah, but that's how people used to be.
Mm.
But sometimes you tell people, hey, you need to practice. You need to learn how to get a good sound on the drums. Maybe you should learn how to play the clicks. I tell people, I've told a bunch of people who reach out to me that after they send me stuff, then they need to do more gigs. They need to do more life before they come to this life, because they're going to really hurt themselves, because that first impression when they're with a conductor or supervisor, and then they struggle, and then they're like, okay, let's just get Clayton's always yells this stuff. And then that's the end of that. Sometimes you don't get a second chance. So it's better to go back and learn this stuff before you come back and try to do this kind of business.
Yeah, but why would you go out and play a bunch of $75 gigs when the real money is on Broadway?
You got to think vision. Everything I do in my life is vision-based. I don't think what's right in front of me. If I do want to do Broadway, then I have to think, what are the steps do I need to take to ensure that Broadway is going to
So the steps are, I'll send you an email and you'll say, yes, I'm going to have you sub for me. And then you sub and then you get a job and you win.
You win. You're laughing because you already know. I know what you're doing. Yeah, you win temporarily until maybe something happens, which happens sometimes. Somebody gets stuck. A hole in their playing happens, or some situation. Some people it's just showing up on time. That's an easy one, but you got to practice. Setting the alarm, getting there. I'm an hour before the show time guy. Some people are 30 minutes. Some people live on the edge because something might happen on that way in for an hour, and I've come close. Like the whole hour, 47 minutes got eaten up. And I walk in, nobody even knows the chaos that just happened. You walk in, they're like, hey, Andrew. Hey, I'm here. We've all been there. What I do is, for some musicians, it's just not the right fit. Sometimes it's just that simple, because we all have different skill sets. Sometimes it's just not the right fit. And maybe for yourself, too, you have to have a good I was just telling one of my students this is one of the greatest tools that she will have, awareness. If she can learn how to understand where she actually is, not just while she's playing on stage, like that out-of-body experience, and you know what I'm talking about, but also like where she is as a musician and how good she is, what she needs to work on. Or I think everybody should have good self-awareness. Maybe they're not good enough for Broadway yet. Maybe they're almost there. Maybe there's this one thing. Maybe this show is not the right show. I get it. It's a numbers game to some people. So I'm going to go call the Latin show. I'm going to call the rock show. I'm going to call the funk show. But maybe you don't do all those styles. So maybe you shouldn't contact those people to do those things. But that's just my mantra, and that's the way I look at it. I think that you should understand where you are at musically and stylistically.
At the time of this recording, there's a new show called Buena Vista Social Club. Out of all the musics that are out there, Afro-Cuban's probably my least, it's one of my favorites to listen to, but actually playing it, I wouldn't really want to be caught on stage with any of those musicians, because they're such high-level musicians and they know that style in and out. So for me to say to Javier, hey man, can I sub for you? I'd be jumping into the deep end of a pool and not knowing how to swim at all, with no kind of life. You can try it, but I'll probably fail. So knowing, what you said, self-aware?
Self-awareness.
I think that's a great quote, because being aware of your limitations and your capabilities is really important. So just wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, and when you're self-aware, it also creates confidence, because then once you start to improve and get really good at the things that you are now aware that you're weak on, and then now you feel like you're strong in them, nobody's going to rattle that ship when they start to say things. You're like, wow, what are you talking about? I already know. I've been recording myself for years, and it sounds great. I've actually also had other people listen to this without them knowing it. They tell me, give critique. I've done a lot of these things to help myself grow as a musician and as a person also. I do it in every aspect of my life. I'm always trying to improve.
Speaking of recording, years ago, did you say you had a recording contract or you?
This is true. I forgot. We didn't mention this. I was in a punk band.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, I was in a punk band, and we were actually, I was living in Jamaica for a while with my dad for about a year. This punk band saw me with my cousin. We had a reggae rock band, and their drummer had got kicked out for whatever reason. It just didn't work, and then they were like, "We want this guy who used to play the cousin." So they were looking for me everywhere. They couldn't. Did this guy die? It was just some family stuff. Mom didn't want me doing music, so she kicked me out of the house. So I lived on the streets for a while to get where I wanted to be. So they called. They got my mom's number from my cousin. She gave them my dad's number, and you have to understand. I haven't heard an American for a while. All I hear is patois, which is the language of Jamaica. Thick Jamaican bush accent. So like my dad, the phone rings and he said, "Yo, somebody on the phone for you." I picked up and I hear, "Hey man." It's just so jarring. And they're like, "Come back to America, man. We just got signed with No Limit Records." And so what had happened is that they played at the Hard Rock Casino in Miami, the Bayside. The Hard Rock restaurant had a concert hall. Master P went in there just to have dinner. And he said, "What the heck is going on in here?" Sold out concert. Actually, we had to turn away half of the people that were there. And so he saw an opportunity, so he signed us. So we were doing these concerts. Master P would come on stage and rap with us. And he'd have his son do all kinds of communication with us in some ghetto ways that made me laugh. And let's have a meeting on AOL, Instant Messenger.
Wow.
But I got to do all these Warped Tours. I got to open up with this band called the Scatolites. I got to open up for James Brown. I got to play in front of 80,000 people. We were on our way. MTV wanted to do a music video with us. There was another band at the time. And it's interesting because doing the drum corps type stuff, the winter drum line, all that stuff was one form of teamwork. This is another form of teamwork. Now, the jazz in me was doing different fills every time. And the singer would turn around and say, What is that? I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "That's not what you played last time." And I was like, "Oh, to them, that's really jazzy. To me, I think I'm rocking out." I was like, "Okay, I have to create a product and do this product every night." The audience, I noticed the fans started playing the fills out loud. They knew the drum fills. And it taught me this thing of getting prepared for Broadway without even knowing it. Decades earlier, 2000, around this time, to do incredible things. We played in front of 80,000 people. We had a whole audience singing the music. Unfortunately, we broke up. There was two bands coming out of South Florida that were blowing up. We were much bigger than the other one. So it was interesting to see what happened to the other band. It was called Newfound Glory.
I remember them.
I'm sitting there and I'm watching MTV and it's like number 5 on the charts. And then here comes we used to call them the jumpers. They jumped a lot. And I was like, look at that. That's good for them. Because sometimes that's all you need to do. Just keep going, working hard towards it. So unfortunately, we broke up. Funny enough, I'm still friends with all the people in the band. The singer of the band ended up becoming like a Hollywood director. Okay. Worked on a bunch of films and now he's getting back into songwriting, moved to Nashville now. And he's trying to get into producing some hits as a singer that way. So still stay in touch, and I talk to the bass player from time to time and then the other band. So that was a great experience because it really taught me another form of teamwork. And that was great. I'll never forget that experience.
One of the things I try to emphasize is experience and how that's really one of your best teachers. If you didn't have the experience of playing in that band, playing with Gregory Porter, playing jazz and when to play fills and when not to play fills in a punk band and playing different styles of music and growing up and listening to Michael Jackson and Jacksons and
playing in the church.
Playing in church. I just find it interesting how people want to go to high school, go to music school, come to New York, and then play Broadway.
Let me ask you a question. Sorry for cutting you off. Does any schools teach you how to play Broadway music? Is there any schools that teach you how to do like the styles of music that you need, or what are they teaching in the schools now? Are they teaching just how to play in a big band Maybe Berkeley has a bunch of different types of programs, but you don't have to do them all. You choose which one you want to do.
From what I'm hearing, it's more jazz and classical. Like there's no other music that's out there that's worthy of attention where I can argue all day long about the genius of It Takes a Nation Millions to Hold Us Back. And you talked about the beginning of Art Blakey, but I would even go back even further and talk about where he got stuff from. As far as the groove is concerned, his deep pocket didn't come from jazz necessarily. Probably might have. I don't know who his influences were, but if you think about people like Louis Jordan and people before him and the blues artists that came before them, they were there to entertain and to make people dance, which I think you can add music schools and they're teaching jazz performance and learning classical, but there's so many other things that are out there that people should know about that are just as valid musically and aren't necessarily getting taught, which to me, I think is the missing link between music school and reality, that there's so many other things that you need to learn in order to play a Broadway show, because you can go to music school and learn how to be the best jazz player. But when you get to play on Broadway, even playing all the shows that are out there now, there's so many different other kinds of music that encompass that show other than just jazz. So I think there's things that are missing. Maybe I'm just...
I have to agree with you. I think there's another aspect that's missing as well, and it's constructive criticism. And now what people think are constructive criticism now is not really, it's PC. And constructive criticism is not always nice. How many times were you on a gig with some street musicians? Maybe they've never stepped foot in college, because college is a fairly new thing if you think about it. It started in your generation, maybe half of the musicians, maybe a quarter were at college. And now it's the majority now. But how many times have you been on a gig with a street musician? The school of the streets, and you're playing and you think you're crushing, and they turn around and they go, "Hey man, what are you doing? Come on, man, put your foot in." Hey, and so what happens is it creates this environment of, man, I don't want to get yelled at. I'm tired of getting yelled at. And they're not yelling at you because they want to see you fail. They're yelling at you because they want the music to succeed. The music is the most important thing. And when I say the music's important thing, because maybe the street musician, whatever, you're in a disco band, you're in a funk band, rock band, you're in a pop gig, you're in a jazz gig, people were more in tune with the audience. That was their main MO. If the butts, I used to be told, man, when you put that bass drum and people's butts shake, you keep going. And when you play it all soft, and I can't say certain words here, and they would say their words, playing like that, it's not gonna happen. You need to give me some. That's where I learned how to play with a little bit more oomph and attitude. There's an attitude because of that. And that's what I used to always be told. You're the drummer. You have to have that certain type of attitude when you play. It's not a cocky thing. It's a strength.
Yeah.
It comes from a form. Whatever you do, it makes everybody else around you feel safe or supported. Secure. Now, you know, how many times people say, "Oh, he's solid."
Yeah.
That's the thing we're talking solid, what it needs. I'm noticing now, because everything in school is very polite. It's playing more polite, and maybe music's evolving into something, I don't know, but I just know that if you go back, and you and I do this, we go back and listen to music even just 20 years ago, and you hear the bands, and it's jarring now. You're like, whoa, because every instrument was like that. When I first heard Dennis Chambers, when I was young, I literally changed my world. How the hell I didn't know you could do that on the drums. And same thing with Vinny. I want to be these guys. Dennis, I copy a lot of Dennis note for note. A lot of people did. He changed. But when I was younger, I was focusing on his fills. But if you really watch him, that guy is about the groove. I went back and was listening to the P-Funk stuff, and holy smokes, he's like a freight train. But like a freight train of funk. Of course, he was younger, it's athletic, the way he's doing it. That was his special skill. That just the way that he was just able to lay that snare and that bass drum down, and the hi-hat work, and pace the set. As drummers or storytellers, and this is the thing I noticed some street guys would say, and this is another thing. I worked for Broadway too. Broadway's a story. You're telling a story. So if you're playing or saying a bunch of big things, then it loses its effect when the biggest moment of a show comes. So you were talking about this thing in Thriller, it's the biggest moment in the show. Yeah, so everything else is happening in the show. I knew that I needed to keep it full and pace my way, that when you get to Thriller, finally you open up a little, and then everyone's like, whoa, because it's not just me, the whole band is opening up. So then now it gives this feeling that we're at the peak. And then everything else, you're cruising out in the end because you don't want to hit them over the head too much. And these are what these guys used to think about all the time. They weren't thinking about this fill, this, that. They were just thinking about the audience. This is again, thinking of being an entertainer or how to entertain through storytelling. And I think a lot of these things are very important to pay attention to. And you don't learn these things unless you play gigs. There's no, back to the thing you're saying, there's no fast tracking coming out of college straight to Broadway. You can do it. Some people are talented. They can do it. But what's going to happen is somewhere down the road, you're going to be like, man, if you're self-aware enough, you're like, man, there's a lot of things musically I'm lacking. And if you really want to succeed in Broadway to the point where you get your own show, I think the best path is to be playing gigs. May not know it. Again, I told a student, I would go, have you ever watched Karate Kid? And they're like, no. I go watch that. Because the wax on, wax off, like, why am I doing this? Don't worry. It'll pay off in the end. Build the foundation up, and then you'll eat for a long time. Yeah. So I really think that, again, you and I talk about the economics of things. It's really like Broadway is probably, it makes sense that people try to get a Broadway gig right away. What I'm saying, I don't think it takes as long as people think. Going out to New York and playing gigs, it'll start snowballing, and you start just learning quickly. So that's the thing. It's an exchange. Everything in life is an exchange. I tell everybody this, even when you're having a conversation. They're taking something from you, and you're taking something from them, and you're giving something back. The reason why we're doing what we do is number one reason for me is to give the audience some form of emotional response. The gratification, whether it's crying, laughing, or clapping, and joy, it's so gratifying when you can see it and you can feel it. And you can lock eyes with the person in the front row and they're looking at you like, oh my gosh. It's a very gratifying feeling. And that's why I always say thank you. I say thank you to myself, to the universe, because this is a very unique position to be in. It's a very powerful instrument and a very powerful position to be able to, it's like a healing, like it's also healing to the audience. And we're almost like sound healers. We play on stage. And I really appreciate that. When you're in the booth, you're disconnected from that essential reason why I know music. Because it really starts at school. Your first audience is your peers and your band director, and you're doing that for 12 years. And after that, well, it's 12 years if you start at first grade. Doing it for a long time, then you go to college and you're doing it in front of a big band. Maybe you do a few concerts here and there. So a lot of people really don't get their first real experience until maybe 15 years in, where they're playing in front of a big crowd. So but that's really the goal. That's the goal. No matter what size, it could be 100 people, could be 80,000 people. It's a very gratifying feeling, and I never take it for granted. I'm always grateful when I'm able to do that. I asked one of the bass players on the show, I said, hey man, the last time you played a gig when everyone was dancing? He thought about it. He said, it's been a while. He goes, that's the most fun I ever have. I said, exactly. It's an exchange. When you're playing and everyone's dancing, having a good time. We're not talking about weddings, by the way. We're talking about concerts, discos, concerts, whatever. Weddings do have that too, but it is the best feeling.
Maybe it's a get out of my lawn type of thing. Maybe we're older, we're like, my lawn, new kids today grow up putting everything out on Instagram and on TikTok. They're in their room and they're playing MJ covers. I'm going to play Thriller from the MJ musical, not Thriller from the song or from the Jackson's Victory Tour. They played that. But I'm playing in my room and I'm putting it out there and I'm getting likes. And then I'm going to go onto Broadway, which is basically like in their room. I'm going to post what I just did and getting likes. As opposed to being on stage in front of 80,000 people. They don't care about that. They care about getting likes and being liked. Do you think they're missing out, or do you think that it's just the way it is now?
It is a little bit of that's the way it is, the changing of the times. But also, ignorance is bliss. I think if they were given a choice, they got to experience both, they would pick the latter, which is being on stage in front of an audience, the lights hitting you, the people clapping, knowing all the words to a song that you're doing. There's nothing. My drum teacher played the Bee Gees. And when they would play those hits, man, audience would be singing all the words. You can't even hear Barry get, like, it's a very special experience that only certain people who've done it understand. Like, this is not to be replaced. That's why some of these get off my lawn older guys. I just saw a thing with Vinny, and he's just talking about, why is there a camera in my face all the time? I'm burping and farting everywhere, and you're chasing with a camera. He's like, what is this? This is not music. This is not what music's about, because he comes from that old world where he got to experience it on a high level. And he respects and understands that. The younger kids, it's a little bit of self-inflicted wounds. There are some benefits. But again, like I said, there's an exchange of energy always, right? In my estimation, to spend time posting on social media, you're losing a lot than you're giving for the majority of people. It's really what causes a lot of people to be depressed, because that's not what music is intended to do. It's a group activity. Music has always been a group activity, down to connecting with social dance. You can go to any tribe thousands of years ago. There was no guy in his hut by himself going playing the drum. It's always a group activity. It's not until now that we're now changing that. And social media is not social. It's literally, we're all in our own little jail cells, and we're all pretending to be sending a message out to the world. It's not the same. And that's what I've always told you this, and I always believe that in the long run, like, what does this do to my spirit? Now, some people, it benefits them. They're really good at it. And a lot of people, maybe they'll do that and they'll still go out and be social. But for the majority of people, I think it's beneficial for them. And these young kids, I don't think that they really understand what they're missing. I just tell people to protect their spirit, and if they feel like this is not making them happy, you don't have to do it. There's other ways to succeed in music. You don't have to post a million posts all day. It's a diary, online diary. You don't need to Dear Diary everybody. So also, I always encourage my students all the time. I said, so first question I always ask, who did you play with this week? I'm trying to get them to stop playing with their phones. Go hang with their friends like we did. I used to go over to my friend's house and sound terrible with them all the time. And then we started getting better. Started sounding okay. Started decent. And then maybe you might play a gig and sound average on the gig. Maybe you guys sound great together. But the point is, I'm playing with people today have more chops than ever, but they just don't understand the other parts of music because they don't have the miles of playing, the hours put in playing with other humans. So that when you do go in and you start playing Broadway, now you can understand how to adjust, because the click is there, but the feel still needs to happen. That's a misconception a lot of people have, is that the click is the feel.
Somebody looks at your social media or your website, if you have a bio up there, there's one thing that's not on your bio that somebody wouldn't know about you. What's one thing that you would share with people that is not on social media that...
Okay.
Other than the fact that you are a humongous Buffalo Bills fan.
All right, sit down. We're out of here. Buffalo Bills. Get out of here. You can't say that to a Dolphins sufferer. I suffered all these years. You guys did too, but you at least made it to the Super Bowl once time. Interesting, because I talked to somebody on MJ about this all the time. And I know many of your other guys talk about the hang and then being able to socialize with people. But one thing, it's funny to see this guy because he's on the other side. He's like pretty much retiring soon. And he's just telling all the young people, everyone who subs on the show, he goes up to them and tell them, get hobbies, learn how to do other things. Music is just not, doing music full time is not going to be fulfilling when you're older. So one thing about me is I'm very much into cars. I literally was just watching videos today on pistons, the rotary engine, the boxer engine, and all the technologies. Watchmaking, I'm into all sorts of different types of things. Again, gaming, I used to game a lot. Made a lot of money gaming, playing Counter-Strike back in the day. You know, some of my friends, they still game. I'm very much into real estate and architecture. There's a lot of other hobbies and other passions that I have. And I think that helps give you a mental break away from music, and also it helps you become a better musician in terms of you just learn how other disciplines do things. And you also learn just about life, and you can put life into the music, because this is someone else's life, being a mechanic or being an engineer or racer. I used to autocross with my friends back then. I used to come to the drag strip all the time. The car hangs. I used to do all that. I lived that life while I was a drummer for years. And then I got into the gaming thing. I did that for years. I just lived all these different things. You wouldn't see any of those things on my site. But I have friends that we still talk about those things, and I still stay current. And what the new graphics card. I used to build computers for all my friends all the time. I built computers for, or maybe I built 100 computers for people. I think that it would be what you say. It wouldn't be music related.
Where can people find you on the interwebs?
The interwebs. I don't use the interwebs that often, but I do have an Instagram. DREWBY drums on Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook. Those are the only two places that I...
No website?
Oh, I do have a YouTube channel, but I don't really do much on any of those things. I focus in the real world.
Okay.
I don't really do much. I don't know. My website, damn.
You are the first person who I've, speaking of the real world, you are the first person who we've had an actual face-to-face conversation in person together. And I thank you for getting me out of my comfort zone to make this happen. So for people that aren't really understanding how this is all working, let me show you. Look at this, look at it. Oh yeah, what's up, man?
What's up, man?
Good lighting over here.
That's right, that's right.
My man, Andrew Atkinson.
My man, Clayton Craddock.
All right. Broadway Drumming 101.
Subscribe. Like, subscribe.
Peace.